Blessings, namaste, and love, everyone. I'm Spiritualist, psychic astrologer, and medium Sette. As always, I'm abundantly grateful for the allowing of this experience to share with you my astrological and spiritual insights. And in this segment, we are looking to the month of May 2024. And as always, we inspire everyone to be very present and in the moment. Everything seems to be unfolding at lightning speed these days. You know, that element right there is inspiration enough to suggest the importance of really being in the moment, being very, very present. And as always, honoring and acknowledging all the blessings that are already surrounding you. Quite often we're so in a hurry to get to where it is that we are going that we miss the blessings of the journey and the opportunities of the moment that we are in at any given second. So that being said, you know, be mindful to keep yourself anchored, grounded. You know, we just came out of an eclipse season. The March 25th lunar eclipse as well as the solar eclipse on April 8th shifted a tremendous amount of energy. It's all unfolding, and quite often the effects, the energies, the impacts of an eclipse, aren't necessarily felt instantaneously right away. Sometimes yes, sometimes they are, and sometimes those influences will be unfolding generally in about the 3 months after the eclipse event. So right now, just allow yourself to acclimate as to the shifts in energy. Allow yourself to recognize what you're being inspired on a personal level to recognize during these times, and choose accordingly, always from a place of love, so that you may recognize how you're being inspired, as always, to bring to form some of your greatest desires. Now, we are aware that Mercury moved direct on April 24th. And as always, I'm suggesting to recognize that not until Mercury moves past the battle point are we not completely out of the retrograde influences. And that moment is May 13th. So yes, Mercury moved direct. It hasn't quite picked up speed yet. So we are still coming out of those influences. As always, every planetary alignment, even a Mercury retrograde, serves a greater purpose when we allow ourselves to understand how to work with the energy. It's recognizing how we need to go with the flow and not resist what we are being presented with in terms of opportunities to really create and bring to form many of the abundant blessings that we desire. Now, speaking of bringing to form, Pluto on May 2nd, Pluto will move retrograde. Pluto generally right now moves retrograde about the May timeframe, and then again it moves direct in the fall, and it will move direct on October 11th. On May 2nd, Pluto will change directions and move retrograde, and it will resume its direct motion on October of this year. Now, many are aware how Pluto had changed signs earlier this year. It went from Capricorn to Aquarius. That being said, it will move retrograde in the early degrees of Aquarius, which actually at 2 degrees of Aquarius, and it will dip back into Capricorn on September 1st. It will not fully move direct in Aquarius until November 19th, and it will remain in Aquarius for about 30 years. So it hasn't moved full force yet into Aquarius. One of the many great potentials of Pluto is the ability, the power to bring to form great things. You know, Pluto is the potential of manifestation, the manifestation element, but on a grand scale, originates and is connected with Pluto. Pluto is our willpower and determination. As Pluto moves retrograde, it's an opportunity to regenerate that will, that determinations, those great desires and the great ambitions. It's also an opportunity for us to remember that we have the power to bring to form and the potential to create anything that we desire. Pluto is to the nth degree being the master of our destiny. Pluto also represents destruction and the dissolve. Whenever we experience Pluto influence transit to our astrological charts, certainly it indicates the time of a great transformation. You see, Pluto will dissolve what no longer serves a purpose for us. Whatever is no longer in alignment with who we are becoming during a Pluto transit, it is being dissolved so that we may become the greatest potential of our being. A Pluto transformation is very metamorphic, and the greatest analogy that we can share is a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. Look how dramatic that change is. And yes, it's a dramatic change, but also it's a very difficult and arduous process. Even when the caterpillar, or rather the butterfly, finally is ready to emerge from that chrysalis, the process of breaking through that cocoon is very difficult and very painful. However, it's very necessary. I remember, I believe it was in one of the chapters in my book, I illustrated that, or rather a story that I heard. I shared a story that I heard where someone observed a butterfly breaking free from a cocoon, and actually the individual assisted the process. And because of that, the butterfly died, because it is a necessary difficulty and challenge breaking through the chrysalis. It has something to do with how the wings of the butterfly need to be formed while it is enduring the process of breaking through that womb, that cocoon. So, we always will honor whenever there's a difficulty, whenever there's a challenge we are presented with, and we are here to inspire you to rise above that. You have the power within you, and that's Pluto, that power within you to rise above any difficulty and any challenge. As Pluto transits in Aquarius, as I mentioned, Pluto will dissolve what doesn't allow us to become or interferes with whatever it is necessary for us to become who it is that we need to become. The Pluto in Aquarius transit, which as I mentioned, lasts about 20 to 30 years, depending upon the retrograde cycle of Pluto. As it moves into Aquarius, this is the potential that will bring forth the age of Aquarius. And that being said, for many years now, probably since Pluto began its transit of Capricorn in 2008, the process of ushering in the age of Aquarius really began to become intensified. The dawning of that was in the mid-1960s with the Pluto-Uranus conjunction, which took place in the mid-60s. And, to quote the line in the song, this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. That's what took place in the mid-1960s with the conjunction of Pluto and Uranus, which is the planetary ruler of Aquarius. That began the process. Now it's being intensified. And that being said, we very much are in times where so much information is being shared everywhere, and much of it, unfortunately, yes, is misinformation, which is not allowing us really to recognize some of our greatest potential. Part of this Pluto experience is, once more, for us to recognize some of our greatest potential, but also to understand how every one of us is such an important element in the ushering in of this new age. And there's no wrong or right where all of this is concerned. The more important factor is the intention of what it is that we are choosing to bring to form. I digressed a little bit, and I was referring to how much misinformation is out there. Pluto moving into Aquarius, especially in the first early degrees, early stages, it will dissolve so much of the misinformation that has been shared for many, many, many years. That process has already begun. This Pluto and Aquarius cycle will begin to really intensify the dissolve of that misinformation and the welcoming of our personal higher truth. When we speak of truth, again, there's no wrong or right. It's really understanding what is serving a purpose for you. Or is all that which you believe serving a greater purpose for you? Is it permitting you to really enjoy everything that you would desire to experience while we are in this human form? If not, it's time to dissolve those beliefs, which Pluto represents metaphysics, the new age, abstract alternative levels of thinking. And unfortunately, there has been some misinformation in the so-called metaphysical and spiritual realms. All of that is very much being dissolved so that we can embrace alternative higher levels of progressive thinking, which very much so is the Aquarius element. Pluto's that power, as I said, to bring to form great things. The destruction connects with, the best analogy that I can use is the detonation of atomic energy. Pluto, which also represents atomic energy, look how the devastation of that experience is so intense. If you can imagine all of that on a creative level, Pluto is what brought to form all that is under creation, under heaven, in the universe, and on earth. Pluto brought to form that power, that willpower, that determination, if you will, comes from that Pluto element. That's what brings to form all these wonderful many blessings. The negative is when we misdirect some of that energy and we attempt at inflicting our thoughts and beliefs on another, trying to control another. That's how, which comes from the knowing of our willpower and that determination, as well as the essence of our creative being. These are all some of the very few of the many, many elements of the great potential of Pluto. So again, what I was emphasizing that is that on May 2nd, Pluto will move retrograde, so that this experience of retrograde is a recharge of the willpower and determination. Observe how whenever it is that you are so determined to achieve something, how that you rise above any difficulty and challenge to achieve that goal. This regeneration is what's allowing of the collective willpower of humanity, is what is permitting the collective, the masses, to really rise above and to bring to form a new age and the new earth. It moves retrograde. Pluto moves retrograde on May 2nd. It will dip back into Capricorn on September 1st of this year. It will resume its passage of Aquarius on October. It will move direct on October 11th, and it will move full force into Aquarius on November 19th of this year. Now, on May 7th, we have our next new moon. And as always, I suggest to recognize how the last stage phase of the lunar cycle, which is referred to as the balsamic moon, the balsamic moon is that opportunity to prepare for the coming lunar cycle. And that process begins on May 4th at 4:25 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That begins the balsamic moon phase of the lunar cycle, which is the last stage of the lunar cycle. And it's an opportunity to clear, purge, release, and prepare for whatever it is that we are beginning, the seeds that we are planting at the time of the new moon. Now, our May new moon is on May 7th, and the exact time of the new moon is 11:22 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Our new moon in May is at 18 degrees of Aquarius. I got the Aquarius thing on my mind. 18 degrees of Taurus. And we have in close proximity to the new moon, Uranus and Jupiter. On April 23rd, we had a conjunction of Jupiter and Aquarius in the sign of Taurus. Taurus represents many, many things. All the signs and all the planets represents many, many things. But Taurus primarily represents our creature comforts, that which we create monetarily, especially all money-related matters. You know, the cycle of Jupiter connecting with Uranus in that sign truly is an opportunity to, one, become very aware and to awaken how abundance in all forms really is part of our human experience. And quite often, for the most part, we don't achieve and create that abundance, whether it's monetarily or anything else, because our beliefs aren't fortifying those manifestations. This certainly is an opportunity to recognize how every one of us has the potential within ourselves, one, to bring to form all that we desire, and that's part of that Pluto experience, but also two, to create the creature comforts that sometimes certainly, allow us to enjoy a little bit more comfortably this human experience. And every one of us, by our birthright, has that potential and is imbued with the power to really create and bring to form all those monetary elements. It's when we need to have them that it doesn't necessarily serve a greater purpose. Whenever it is that we are so in need of something, one, that inadvertently just reinforces that need element. And if we can move to a place where we just know that all which is required for us to comfortably enjoy this human experience is lovingly, freely given to everyone, no one left out, from the universe, God, Spirit, Prime Creator, Mother, Father, God, however it is that you would like to define or have a label, if you need to, of that element. Although we also understand that once we place a label on that element, we begin to reduce really the significance of it, because it's very difficult to define that which is all-encompassing. And that understanding does come from the Course in Miracles. But what I'm emphasizing is, at this new moon, really permit yourself to be in that place of allowing yourself to really receive many of these monetary blessings, but also, too, that you have the power to create all those creature comforts. And as I mentioned, it's when we have a need, when those external elements inadvertently define who it is that we are, it's not necessarily serving a greater purpose. Ironically, the less that we need something, it presents a situation for the universe to bring us all those many blessings in ways so much greater than we can imagine. And Saturn is forming such a nice aspect to the sun and moon at this new moon, which is really presenting the ability to tap into and bring to form these opportunities that will bring us these many, many blessings. Also, I know there are quite a few out there who are desiring to welcome new employment opportunities. This new moon, among many possibilities, is such an auspicious prospect for us, those who desire new employment, greater employment, new opportunities regarding those job-related situations, to really plant those seeds and welcome those blessings. Part of this experience as well with this new moon, because Pluto, I got that Pluto thing on my mind, excuse me. Taurus is ruled by Venus. Venus is the planetary ruler of Taurus. So certainly that Venus element, which also Venus is in Taurus as well, but it's about 8 degrees away from the sun and the moon. Venus is, among many things, very creative. It's that creative element. At this time, perhaps also allow yourself to recognize how you can be very creative in terms of what perhaps you may implement to bring to form some of your greatest monetary, if you will, desires, as well as gainful employment at this new moon. Now, on May 18th, sorry about that, that's the wrong date. On May 20th, the sun transits into the sign of Gemini, and the exact time of that is 8:59 a.m. And one thing I just want to reinforce with that is, or rather reiterate, is how the sun doesn't change signs on a day. The sun will transit into another sign at a moment, which is not necessarily on a specific day. For example, someone could be born in the Eastern time zone in the early hours of May 20th and be a Taurus, and then another can be born later in the day and be Gemini because the sun changed signs at a different time during the day. The Gemini element, Gemini is very much about communications and the thought process. Gemini represents the lower levels of thinking, which are very much connected to the third dimension. The opposite of that Gemini is Sagittarius, which is the higher mind and higher abstract levels of thinking. But as the sun transits the sign of Gemini, we are always inspired to recognize the power of our thoughts and the powers of the spoken word. Remember, there's a reason that vocabulary is referred to as spelling, because with words we cast spells. I learned a very, very, very long time ago to be acutely aware of all the thoughts that I generate, as well as how I craft the words that I employ to express those thoughts. You know, I believe it was in chapter 3 of my book, I suggested that if we allow ourselves to recognize, honor, and acknowledge every thought that we generated, as well as every word that we spoke in every moment of every day, we would become abundantly clear with how we're creating our realities. You know, going back to that Pluto cycle of experience and the ability to manifest and to bring to form great things, it begins with intention, and then the thoughts and the power of the spoken word. So as the sun transits Gemini, certainly we are inspired to become aware of the thoughts that we are generating and the words that we are crafting, and to be abundantly clear, to be in alignment with our intentions, our thoughts, and our words. Thought, word, and deed, that's the creative process. And when all of those elements are in alignment with one another, we tap into that ability to bring to form exactly what it is that we choose and desire to experience. When we're not welcoming those many blessings, it's because there's an incongruency with the thoughts and the words. We're thinking one thing, we're feeling another, and we're speaking something else completely different. That just creates chaos. So in this experience as the sun transit Gemini, as I said, allow yourself to really recognize the power of communication and the spoken words. Now, I referred to earlier that Sagittarius, which is the opposite of Gemini, is a sign that represents abstract thinking, the higher mind. Our full moon in May is on May 23rd, and the exact time of that full moon is 9:23 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And the full moon is in the early degrees. It's almost 3 degrees of Sagittarius. That's the higher mind, higher thoughts, higher thinking, abstract thoughts, and progressive thinking. You know, there's a major, massive shift in consciousness that's taking place, which is a progression towards higher levels of thinking and higher thought and abstract thinking, which is also part of that Aquarius experience as well. So much of the eclipse energies on April 8th was very much an acceleration to higher thinking, abstract thinking, the higher mind, the higher self, higher levels of consciousness. You know, just on a personal level at this full moon, really allow yourself to recognize your connection with what we refer to as the higher mind and the higher self, and allow yourself on a personal level to receive the guidance that comes through for you from your mind and your higher self, and dissolve those beliefs which no longer serve a purpose for you. You know, full moons intensify, it's also a release. So this full moon certainly is also another opportunity to really release any beliefs and belief systems which are not in alignment to higher levels of consciousness. You know, part of this experience on a personal level is for everyone to really recognize that we all have a greater purpose, you know, and that purpose really is connected to that which we are very passionate about in our lives. I understand that great passion, you know, is very much equal to a greater and a higher purpose. Because quite often we don't allow ourselves to honor and acknowledge with whatever that might be. And then we kind of talk ourselves out of the experience that for whatever reason, if we followed our passion, we may not necessarily have the ability to really sustain ourselves. Those are all lower levels of thinking, which are not in alignment with perhaps who you need to become. So with this full moon, really recognize your connection with your higher self and the higher mind and how you're being guided. That being said, that Sagittarius element also represents higher beings, all of which are very present and supportive of the all of humanity as well as who we are on a personal level. The higher beings, they're the angels, extraterrestrials, which really metaphysically we understand there are no difference between angels and extraterrestrials. They're really all one and the same. That's why I choose to refer to them as higher beings. Certainly many of them are benevolent beings. And yes, we also have to recognize the presence of the lower level entities that I do feel there's not, the influence isn't as great as it may have been at one time regarding the lower level beings, but certainly, we still are on human plane, and sometimes these elements are part of our experience, which at the creative level, they're really just opportunities to recognize the light that is within ourselves. Just like if we didn't have hot, we couldn't understand cold. Sometimes the lower is an opportunity to see that potential lower level and element within ourselves, and also to choose to not demonstrate that and to rise above it and to see the light. Honor the light that's inside of you, and as much as you can, bring that light to wherever it is that you go. Certainly care for yourself, keep yourself in a good place, remain in the light, and always in a place of love. Many blessings. Namaste.